So we want to go where our customers are. Those are always the moments when I have grown most.
Who are some of the CEOs or leaders that you learned from?
There's a few. I should have actually come here with a list. I would say do the thing that scares you. Authenticity is about transparency and vulnerability.
I'm here with Meghan. Meghan is the VP of Brand Content and Communications at ZoomInfo. I think everyone knows ZoomInfo, go-to-market intelligence solution, publicly traded company. I think your yesterday's earnings call might bump that number a little bit, but you guys are doing around 1.2 billion ARR. Before joining ZoomInfo, Meghan was a reporter at the Associated Press and a senior editor at the Boston Globe. I hope I got that right. And yeah, anything to add or amend or change there?
No, I think you covered it. Yeah, I was a journalist for about 16 years before I joined corporate America. So I spent about 10 years at the Associated Press, parachuting into breaking news. I covered stories like Occupy Wall Street, the Boston Marathon bombing, Superstorm Sandy. And then I moved up to Boston to become an editor. So I covered all kinds of breaking news as an editor at Boston.com. And then I joined the Sunday magazine. And then I was recruited out of journalism by our CEO, Henry. And then now I've been at ZoomInfo for almost 5 years, which is crazy.
Wow. Tell me about that because that was also one of the questions that people had for you. How did that transition happen?
Yeah, it was really crazy. Henry and I were just talking about this the other day. So he wanted to hire a journalist specifically, which I think is unusual, although maybe
And
perhaps
he was hiring for like just comms or brand and comms that you already know?
yeah, it was content and comms at the
Yeah.
time. And then it grew to include brand. And over my 5 years at ZoomInfo, I've overseen various different functions as we have grown as a company, which it's been really great because I've been able to build out our brand function, our content team, our expansion into video. But so yeah, I was approached for this job, and the search firm said, have you heard of this company, ZoomInfo? And I was like, I have not. And I was at the time, it was the fall of 2020. It was the middle of the pandemic. I had three little kids. And so I was actually, and we were doing remote learning in pods. And I don't know if anyone on the call remembers that time, but it was a tough time. And so I was a little hesitant to make a huge career change because I just felt like, wow, this is intimidating. And I don't know if I can do it. And I had a lot of imposter syndrome, but they sort of just made me an offer I couldn't refuse. It was such a cool opportunity that I had to do it. So I took the leap.
So do you recommend it? What advice would you have for other people with a journalist background or who are working in journalism on whether to make that jump and how to make that jump into comms?
Yeah. So, first of all, yes, I have never regretted it for a single minute. It's been such an incredible experience. It really has been like a transformative job for me. I think the advice that I give to a lot of people, and I give this advice to working mothers in particular, because I think often when you're feeling overwhelmed and you're the working mom, you feel like I can't take on more, or, I can't do something that's going to push me out of my comfort zone. But I think every time that I have done something that scares me in my career, something that feels like this is going to be really hard and maybe I might fail at this thing. Those are always the moments when I have grown most and when I have really it's been a moment of transformation for me professionally. So I would say do the thing that scares you. It's kind of like a
Mhm.
cliche piece of advice, but I was terrified to take this job. And I'm so glad that I did. And I think for journalists in particular, the storytelling skills that you have learned and mastered as journalists, they apply to, I would say, any job in the corporate world, but particularly comms, content, brand, it's about telling a story, right? That
Yeah.
people want to pay attention to.
Yeah. What skills do you think help you? Because I mean, it clearly worked out and you're clearly successful. I mean, you've been with them for over 5 years. You got promoted to VP at some point. I mean, in tech, I think, turnaround is a little higher and you're working directly with a very busy CEO who I'm sure has very high standards,
Yeah.
not the most casual job. So like, what do you think you did well that, allowed you to what seems like thrive?
Yeah, thank you. And yes, I love, yeah, not casual. I would say um the things that help me thrive. So one thing, so when you grow up in a newsroom and you're covering breaking news and you're covering natural disasters and terrorist attacks, I think those skills, I learned to be very calm in a crisis, and I also learned to move very quickly,
Mm,
and just sort of just go and do the thing, and don't create three slide decks before you decide to make a decision, and go do the thing. And that is how ZoomInfo very much operates that way, still with that execution mindset. And so when you're a journalist, you have to execute or you can't survive in that role, right? So I just learned to just get stuff done. So I think that helped me a lot in this role. And then I think, for exec comms in particular, what's interesting is, and I did not realize this would be a skill set that would help me, but when you're a journalist, you're listening all the time. You're
mm,
listening, listening, listening. If I was writing a story, I might speak to 20 different people to get their inputs on a story before I would be able to synthesize all of that information and publish the story. And so I became a very good listener. And when I'm trying to tell a story for Henry or help him find his voice, I'm listening to him all the time. And so I'm picking up on, first of all, how he speaks, how he
mm,
engages with people. And so I am good at sort of capturing that. But also, I'm always listening for what's the next story that we should tell. And I might hear that in an event that Henry's speaking at. I might hear it in something he says to employees or an email that he's sent. I'm always looking for themes and storylines. And so that's kind of, I did that as a journalist, right? That's what I did. So it's an interesting kind of parallel to how that works in the corporate world.
So, I mean, obviously, the big reason why I wanted to have you on is because, I mean, I see Henry on LinkedIn all the time, and I think he's one of his CEO brand is, I think, one of the best ones out there, especially for this size of company. I mean, there are some startup CEOs who are very, very active, but running a public billion plus revenue company and then doing this, and so like how did this motion happen? Like, did he already have this in mind when he hired you? Like, how did this whole, like, let's take LinkedIn seriously and put out content through my LinkedIn profile happen?
A great question. It definitely was not something we spoke about when I first started. But when I started in early 2021. And I don't think LinkedIn has become predominantly, the platform that executives are using to communicate through, right? And that really wasn't as much the case in 2021. So I would
Hmm.
say we were always working on how to tell stories on his behalf, but it started more actually with blogs and speaking appearances and podcasts, and then it started to shift to LinkedIn about 2 years ago, I would say, in a more serious way, where it was like, okay, now we're thinking about how are we going to tell a story through LinkedIn, and maybe that's going to take precedence over a blog. That's going to take precedence over. And then it became, all right, how are we going to, optimize on LinkedIn? So now we have to shift into video because the algorithm is prioritizing video. Just like everyone else, we're trying to constantly figure out how can we cut through the noise and get people to pay attention to what we're saying. So, so to answer your question, I think it was sort of an organic shift to LinkedIn, and I think I'm always thinking about what is the best channel to tell this story. So it might be LinkedIn, but then it also, maybe it's a different channel. But I would say that has become the number one channel for Henry. And I appreciate you saying that you admire what he's putting out there because we work really hard behind the scenes to put that out.
What made it obvious for you guys? I mean, I talk to a lot of CEOs and founders, and I mean, I still get pushback that why should a CEO be posting on LinkedIn? And I mean, again, 2 years ago, it was, I mean, even less obvious than it is maybe now in 2025. Like, what did you guys see that made you guys commit to this and treat it so seriously?
Well, I think we're always thinking from a customer first mindset at ZoomInfo, right? So we want to go where our customers are
Yeah,
and our
fair.
and our our future customers, right? And so we started to recognize that they're all hanging out on LinkedIn. Salespeople, marketers, like that's where they're pulling up their LinkedIn probably before they're pulling up maybe another app, at first thing in the morning. So that's where they're getting their news from in a certain sense. That's where the conversation is happening. I think we were looking at like where are people talking? Where and it's not just LinkedIn, there's private Slack communities, there's all different places where people are talking. But really we were looking at how do we migrate to where our customers are because that's ultimately the number one thing, right?
Yeah. Now take us a little bit behind the scenes of one person in the comments said how the sausage is being made. Like, what does the collaboration between you and Henry look like? Do you come up with things? Does he come up with things? Do you draft something and he edits it? Like, how does it work?
Yeah. That's a great question. So I am very fortunate in the sense that Henry is a great storyteller. He is an idea machine. Anyone who has worked for Henry, and not just like ideas for the business, but ideas like fun, creative storytelling ideas. So I would say it is a constant back and forth. Sometimes I'll come up with the idea, sometimes he will. It really depends. But I can give like one concrete example of
Yeah.
how come together. So
And by
he
the
did,
way, I'll just interrupt you real quick. I
yeah.
am working from the assumption that you guys all know Henry Schuck and you've seen his content. If you don't, I just dropped the link. I mean, take a look. I think, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, go
Continue.
go check it out. So I'll give one recent example. So Henry did a post not long ago about how he wrote his own obituary, which did pretty well. So some people may have
Mm,
seen that post. And it was basically the substance of the post was we spend so much time in our lives planning for our business plans, right? So we plan our careers, we do 5-year strategic plans for the business, but we don't always take that time to do that in our personal lives. So he ended up writing a post on LinkedIn about this. And so it was my idea. So this is an interesting how it's like this is a story that Henry had told elsewhere. And I was like, we
mm.
should put that on LinkedIn. So he had attended a conference in New York, and I watched the recording. So I would say a big piece of advice that I have for people who are trying to create CEO content is like, look at what they're already putting out there. You should be watching and not consuming every single thing, every appearance, every podcast, everything, any internal materials. You can mine great ideas from memos. There's stuff everywhere. But so I said, I love this story that you told at this conference. You should do a post about it on LinkedIn. And at first he was like, I don't know, is that too personal? And we kind of talked it through, and then he agreed to do it. So, in terms of how the sausage is made, then he had the idea of like, oh, let's create a cool image of like the text message thread that I had with my wife, where I told her that I wrote my own obituary. And he did it when he was on like an airplane. And so then
Yeah,
I,
I found the post. I
yeah.
dropped the link in there.
So then I worked with our creative team and I said, hey, can you guys help us create this image? This is what we're thinking. They put it together. We went back and forth a little bit. And then I drafted some copy for him. He then looked at it, put in his own edits. We went back and forth a little. And we had the post up, I think, in 6 hours. Like it was, and this is often how we work. Like we'll be like, this is an idea, let's do it. And then we just do it. And it's not
Mm.
like, sometimes there's more planning, and I can talk about some of those. Usually, if it's video production, there's a bit more that is behind it. But, we're pretty scrappy and we're just like, good idea, do it, get it done. And that's how Henry operates. And so that is what makes it fun.
And is that like a Slack conversation? Like you watch something and you
Yeah.
ping him on Slack and be like, there should be a post.
Yes, we basically live on Slack at ZoomInfo in many ways. So yeah, I if I'm in the office, we could talk about it in person. But yeah, all of this happened on Slack,
Yeah.
actually.
And then, I mean, so what's your and Henry's goal when you put it out? I mean, that's an obituary, right? Like it's not like go to market stuff. So
Yeah.
like how do you think about why are we doing this? What are we trying to get out of this? Do you measure it or do you just trust the process that it like take me behind that a little bit?
So I would say, like, if you're taking a step back, Henry, I'm always looking to provide a really nice mixed balance of content that's coming out from his profile. So that will range from, helping to talk about our product, talk about the business, give concrete go-to-market advice, like educating, but then also, and this is where I would say the obituary post fits in, is sort of showing the person behind
Yeah.
the company, right? And I think this is especially important for founder CEOs, but I think honestly, in today's day and age, all CEOs should be doing this. And this is where you get into authenticity. And I think, being an authentic person and showing up authentically online is really important for leaders. So it's not like this bland corporate speak. So that type of a post, the goal of that post for me was this is going into Henry as an authentic human and a person, right? And I think authenticity is about transparency and vulnerability. So it's like I'm showing like I'm a vulnerable person and I'm thinking about these things that everybody's struggling with, like my life and then my business and how do those things come together? And so I would say each post has its own goal, right?
Yeah.
And it has a different, and I think the goal is you don't want to lean too hard into, you don't want to do too much personal stuff. You don't want to go overboard on just trumpeting your product or, so it's figuring out that mix and that balance of, a good, healthy content
Yeah.
diet, I would say.
Do you have content pillars written down somewhere? I mean, it sounds like there's kind of company, like quarterly earnings, then
Yeah.
there's this personal stuff to build rapport, then there's product stuff where he does a demo, and then there's go-to-market advice. Those are the four buckets that I heard out of this.
Yes. Yeah, and that about sums it up, I would say. It's funny because I've been working with Henry for so long that I don't think I've written these down in a while because we just work so organically
It's like
together.
an intuitive sense. I think we've been talking too much about the product lately. Let's do a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah, but those are the things. And I would say this all also feeds into the larger brand and content strategy for the company, right? And there is a content roadmap and so I would say, but because Henry also has such a great following on LinkedIn, he ends up becoming and I'm sure a lot of people on this call have seen this, like the algorithm is valuing people over companies. So we also started leaning more into Henry when we started noticing that happening. That even though like the ZoomInfo brand account has, I think we're at like 240,000 followers or something like that now, much more than Henry, but he gets more reach.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And then do you do some sort of like, let's say that post, I just pulled it up. It has like, what, 400 likes, 35 like, is there any sort of conversation of, was this successful? Should we do this
Yeah.
again? Post, analysis of this. And then if so, like, what are the criteria that you care about, that Henry cares about?
Yep. So we're looking at engagement. We're looking at, so we're looking at all of those metrics that you just mentioned, that how is a post performing? I will say, and I'll be curious if anyone on the call has struggled with this, because the LinkedIn algorithm has changed so much over the past year. Like we noticed Henry's post, it used to be if he got like over 100K engagement, that was the sign of a good post for us. But
You mean
then
1,000?
100,000
100,000 impressions?
impressions.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
If he was getting over 100K impressions, that was like, okay, this is a home run post. And so we
Yeah.
would always look to see, we actually will sometimes be like, oh, this one's going to go over 100, and we'll like take bets on it. But what has happened in recent, I would say over the past few months, we saw a big drop overall in just like how much reach he was getting. And I know a lot of people have seen this on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Now I've been struggling with like, so what does good look like now? And what 100,000, maybe it's now 50,000 is the metric. So we're constantly having to shift with the social media platforms are changing.
Yeah. How are you managing this conversation? I mean, I don't know the nice word to say this, but we work with a lot of founders and CEOs, and they can be quite anal about this, where like one week they're crushing, next week they're not crushing, and there you immediately get the Slack message like, why are impressions 50% down? And you're
Yeah, yeah,
trying to be like, I don't know, like I mean, it's noise, it's up and down. Sometimes you hit a home run and sometimes you don't. I don't, like how does that
yeah.
up and down conversation go? Is it just part of the game, or how do you justify it? Or
Yeah, I think I've been working with Henry for so long. He's very direct with his feedback. So if I know if something didn't go well or he's unhappy with something, I will hear about it right away. Um, so I would say in terms of if something performs or doesn't, I think we share the same mentality in the sense that like some things are going to stick and some things won't, and you actually just need to keep experimenting and trying new things and then you figure out what works and what doesn't, right? And I mean, I even when I was at the Boston Globe, like we would look at their metrics were we used to use this software platform called Chartbeat. I don't know if it still exists for media companies, but it would show you this incredible swath of metrics of how whether a story was helping people convert into paid subscribers,
Mm,
how many people read it, all these things. And we would sometimes be shocked by the stories that would do really well and the stories that tanked. Like we'd be like, oh, this story is going to do so well,
right.
it's viral, and then nobody read it. And it's like, okay, and you just sometimes it's just like a secret magic. You don't know what's going to perform, and you just have to keep putting stuff out there.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let's get to some audience question. Joe asks, are there any frameworks you use for his publishing strategy?
It's a good question. Um, I would say we're trying to always tie in his posting strategy into what we're doing from a broader marketing perspective. So it's kind of actually the pillars that you mentioned, Finn, earlier. It's like, okay, we're looking at how are we tying it into product launches? How are we tying it into overall brand awareness and brand messaging, brand perception? How are we tying it into, Henry as a person, as a leader? So, I would say I'm not someone who like has ever followed a formula. That's just kind of how I work. We're just constantly, it's like a little content lab that we're just constantly iterating and experimenting.
Yeah. And then I think Robert gave you a compliment here. All B2B marketing sales enablement players post about their unique GTM insights in the playbooks. Few B2B leaders take a personal approach to bring their story to life. Comes more relatable, approachable, cuts through. Do you have plans to extend the voice and personal brand with other members of the leadership team, LinkedIn or otherwise?
Yes, that's such a great question. Yes, we are actually actively working on that. So our chief product officer, Dominic Fotcher, for example, is someone that we're really trying to put out there, not just on LinkedIn, but also with news media, on podcasts. Same with our Chief Revenue Officer, James Roth. I think it's really important to build out your executive bench, so to speak, so that, first of all, your CEO's time is limited. They can't take every podcast. They can't always be the face of the company. And that provides some diversity and it also just helps you reach different audiences as well. So 100%, that's something that we're working on. I have someone on my team. Her name is Paige. She's wonderful. And so she is actively working on thought leadership plans for actually a certain, not just our C-suite, but SVP plus.
Mhm.
To and she sits down with them. We'll sit and have a conversation and say, okay, what are the things you want to talk about? What are the topics you feel comfortable with? Do you feel comfortable on video? Do you, where? Because I also think it's really important to meet people halfway. Like, you don't want to make an executive feel like they're being pushed too far out of their comfort
Yeah.
zone, or they really don't like to be on camera. Okay, we can work around that. So really trying to work with each person individually on that.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not their main job. They have a main job, and
No.
then hopefully they, yeah. Um, Rachel asked or said, it's refreshing how much your CEO clearly values comms and two is open to trial and error. A rare breed can count on both hands how many people I've shared his LinkedIn content with. There you go, another
Love that.
compliment. Yeah, I think this ties into, you mentioned that before our conversation on like how to find the balance between, let me see how you phrased it, like managing the risk versus pushing boundaries when it comes to storytelling and kind of finding the balance there. Like how do you approach it with him? What's spicy, what's not spicy, how to decide?
Yeah, well, I can give a good example of that. So I would say Henry's risk tolerance is higher than mine. And which makes sense. Like I am our head of comms, so it is my job to look for how could this play in the bad way. I have to think of the worst case
Mm,
scenario in each situation. He's always thinking of, well, what's the best possible scenario? And so I would say we will debate those things and we will argue about them, and then we will get to a place where we both feel comfortable. But I can give one example, and people may have seen this post. This was from over a year ago at this point, but we had this period of time where customers were unhappy with the quality of our international data.
hmm I
So
remember this,
ZoomInfo,
yes.
provides data, and so we Henry wanted to get this message out there that we had actually fixed that problem. We had gone back and we had, really improved the quality of the international data. And so he sent me an email. This was like almost 2 years ago at this point, and he's like, I want to take out billboards. I want to find the customers who complained about us on social, who left these comments saying ZoomInfo's international data is terrible, they suck, and basically find those people, take out billboards in their individual hometowns, and put a billboard that says like, "I'm sorry, we fixed it."
Wow.
Put my personal cell phone on the billboard. And
Wow.
so I was like, okay. And everyone thought this was a crazy idea. Like he sent it to a bunch of people, and I was like, I see where this could be a great idea, but I'm also like, how do we actually pull this off? Like, how do we do this, and how do we do it in such a way that because that could go south, right? Like that could go like so we ended up actually doing this. Like literally, we found these people, we sent them gift baskets, we did all of these crazy things, and we ended up taking out billboards in there was one in the UK, one in California, one in Denver. Like we actually did this. And we filmed this beautiful video where we then sent videographers to film the customers reacting to the billboard. It was like, oh my God, ZoomInfo CEO took out a billboard to apologize to me. And
Yeah.
so anyway, that's a good example where Henry's instincts were right, and I was viewing it through the like, I don't know, this I'm too nervous about this, and then
Yeah.
no, I really want to do it. And I was like, okay, so that's where it was like risk versus, reward. And honestly, that post went viral. People loved that video. We got so much attention. And it ended up actually being kind of a masterclass in like, how can you communicate with your customers in a way that is authentic and like showing humility. So anyway,
Yeah.
go check that one out. I could find that video, and also our video team knocked it out of the park. Like they did this wonderful video.
That's
So
amazing. Thank you for joining, Michael. He needs to drop off. I think I remember, I think that's how Henry started to pop up on my radar initially on LinkedIn, which is not his content, but his comments. And he was commenting on other people's posts that had tagged him or ZoomInfo. And it was often negative posts where people are like, this sucks. I'm not happy. What are they doing? And he was like, we're fixing it. I'm sorry. Like, here's how I'm taking accountability. And I think that's how I was like, wow, like that's
yes,
cool.
and I can actually talk about that a little bit too, because this is also such a great example of how like where PR and social media and CEO comms all intersect.
Hmm
There was a period where I would say about 2 years ago where we were getting a flood of customer complaints for different things, right? They were unhappy, and so they would as people do, they turn to social
Yeah.
media as their mouthpiece to complain. And so my team built this whole, we call it our social media SWAT team, and it still exists today. And we were tracking every single negative comment that people were leaving about ZoomInfo, not just the ones that were tagging Henry. We built a spreadsheet. We had a spreadsheet for a while that we were updating every day. And then Henry would go look at the spreadsheet, he would see the post, and then he would go personally comment on it.
Wow.
Or he would actually call these people sometimes and apologize on the phone. And it was literally like every single comment. Like we spend so much time doing this, and like it took some time, but over time we were able to turn that negative sentiment to positive. But it was Henry who was willing, he was in the trenches with us every day, like
Yeah.
willing to do. I don't think a lot of CEOs would be
No,
willing
for
to do
sure. Now, I mean, it looks like you've really, let's say, found a gold mine with Henry because he gets it. He wants to do these things. He's collaborating and he brings in ideas on his own, and it's a great collaboration. Would you say for maybe comms, PR, brand leaders who don't have that kind of CEO, who are not naturally talented at this stuff or don't naturally have these ideas, maybe they're not as outspoken or willing to kind of, jump through the fire. Should you then just not do it? Should you coach them into this? Like, do you think there are certain criteria that a CEO should hit where this play, what you're doing with Henry, makes sense, and others where you should just forget about it? How do you think about it?
Great question. I think you need to meet people where they are. I'll actually go back to kind of how I approach all of our entire executive team. I think you can coach people. I think you can figure out what their comfort level is. And then I think you build it over time, right? Like we weren't doing Henry Day in the Life videos 5 years ago. I don't think he ever would have agreed to do that
Mm,
5 years ago, but we sort of built it over time where it was like, okay, it's sort of like brick by brick approach. And I think you have to develop that trust with your CEO. And so figure out like what is the reason why they feel uncomfortable with this?
mm,
What are they worried about? And how do we sort of address that concern? Like I think you have to have trust. Like Henry knows I'm never going to ask him to do something that's going to embarrass him or put him out there in a bad way. In fact,
yeah,
usually it's more like he's willing to do the thing
right.
and I'm like, let's maybe pull that back. But I think because you have that trust, and I think also this is another good one. I think figuring out what is your CEO's and like sensibility, like, do you have the same sense of what does great look like? What does great
Mm,
content look like? What does great comms look like? And making sure you're aligned there, because I think if you have that foundation, then you can build off of that foundation and try and figure out, okay, so what can we do? What stories can we tell together where you're going to feel comfortable?
yeah, makes sense. Now, I'm curious to get your take on this. I've over the last couple of weeks, I've talked with a couple of PR leaders, comms and PR leaders, and I've got the sense that, especially when it comes to executive comm, CEO content, most are interested in the very classic PR content, like company announcement, product releases. I'm so excited to announce our new partnership with, but not so much like thought leadership, not so much like takes on the industry, where things are going, like really a CEO's sometimes a little bit, unusual, spicy point of it. Like, is there this tendency? Is that true? How do you think about it? Because you guys are clearly not just in the playing it safe era. Is this
Yeah.
then more brand rather than PR?
That's interesting. And I'm surprised actually that that's what you're finding because I think that those posts, the sort of, we're so thrilled to announce XYZ, like, yeah, I guess to a certain degree, those posts can be part of what you do if you have big announcements.
Yeah.
But though, no, people are not going to stop their scroll for those posts. Those are the ones
No,
that
but they're
personally
safe. That's my sense. Most want to play it
I
safe.
And I think the companies that are playing it safe, I mean, at a certain point, like people are just not going to be paying attention to your content. So I think it's just a question of like, do you want to stand out and do you want people to stop and pay attention to what you're saying, which ultimately then is good for your business, right? And
Yeah.
leads to success there? Or do you want to just be part of this sea of bland sort of sameness, Because there's so much. I mean, I myself am overwhelmed every day by the content in my feed, and it's got to be really interesting. And I don't mean it doesn't have to be a hot take or like actually I hate those posts that are like purposely just trying to stir the pot,
Yeah.
because we
Sure.
all know those posts. And you don't, I think maybe sometimes there's a disconnect. Companies think, well, I don't want to do those things. I don't want to put us out there and do something that's going to create some huge backlash.
Yeah.
But then they're playing it too safe. So you have to get towards the middle somewhere.
Right. Yeah. Robert asked, how do you help manage key messaging up present and woven through the company, sales, international teams, product, marketing, speakers?
Yeah, so we spend a lot of time. at the end of last year and then or beginning of this year, actually redoing our brand messaging at ZoomInfo. And just refreshing our story so that, a lot of people view ZoomInfo traditionally as a contact data lookup tool, and we are actually a full AI-powered go-to-market intelligence platform now.
Hmm.
And so we spent a lot of time working on our brand messaging so that that is reflected in everything that we do. So we now have internal training so that people understand that story. Whenever our executives are doing, any type of external appearance, or we recently ran a series of events that we called Go to Market 25, where we went to different cities and talked about the story. So we're making sure that that fundamental brand messaging is woven throughout everything that we do. So that's very important because people just, again, because we're busy and we all have so much coming at us, it's like you have to say the same things over and over and over again. And then maybe someone might remember one time of 10 times you said that thing.
Yeah.
And you also have to make it really clear and easy for people to understand, like fifth grade reading level, I think, because it's like, again, there's too much coming at us.
I mean, I would add, I don't know if you disagree, that actually CEO brand is a great way to partly achieve that, because it's one thing to say this once in an all hands, and it's something else to see your CEO every day, every week speak about these themes over and over and over again. And obviously, it's not just external comms that you do through LinkedIn. You're actually doing internal comms, because a large amount of ZoomInfo employees, I'm sure, consume Henry's content too.
We actually talk about that. Henry, a year or two ago, said to me, I think more employees are reading my LinkedIn posts than they are reading my emails that I send out. And I actually think that's very true. I don't have proof of that, but I think, yes, it is just as much an internal mouthpiece as it is external. And that's equally important, right? Because you want your employees to feel engaged and understand what's happening. And, all of these things, it's like one holistic story that needs to feed into itself.
Yep. Now I want to take another little how the sausage is being made. So Henry does a lot of, I like them. I actually watch them often, even though I can't afford some info yet. Um, these like little product demos, and I just linked up one recent one where he how to, I think, track new hires at a buying committee. And like they feel in a good way scrappy. Like they feel like Henry literally just pulled up his own Zoom, recorded himself for 2 minutes, did a little demo. Maybe that's actually how it happens, or maybe there's actually a lot more kind of prep. Like, how are those being created?
Yeah. So we started these my first year here, and it's called his In Your Corner series, right?
Hmm.
So this was actually our first, I would say, foray into Henry like doing a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. And we started with these demos and they've just continued. We kind of stopped for a while and then he resurrected them last year. So yeah, it's literally he just goes on his computer, films it. We have set that up for him. Like our video team, made sure that he has everything he needs to do this. And then he'll just record it and he'll kick it over the fence to me and our video team. And then over time, we have certain just standards and things that we do, graphics that we apply to it. They'll tidy it up and get it ready.
Sure.
And yeah, so it literally is. He is actually creating that content himself, and so it feels scrappy because it is, I think.
Yeah. And does he come up with a use case? Do you have a list of here's the new features we want people to
Yeah.
know exist, and so let's prioritize those?
Yes, he typically picks the use case, but we actually do these types of videos. You'll see if you look at our company account, we've been doing these across the company for the past year or two. So, for example, when we launched our Copilot product last year, we had a list of use cases, and then we matched those up with various experts within the company who could film these videos. So, yeah, so basically we have the list, and Henry picks the ones that he wants to do himself.
I mean, I would say another ingredient why it works well for you guys is Henry is in the trenches.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, he's not the, what do they say, ivory tower CEO who just manages the managers. Like he seems to like really know the product, and so he can like relatively quickly show a quick demo.
Yes. And I do think that some of that's, I think founders are kind of built different. Like I think
Yeah.
that's a founder thing because the company is their baby, and so it is he treats it that way. But yes, he is in the trenches, not only like on this in this respect, but with our sales team, he's helping to close deals. Like he is the most in the trenches CEO I've ever worked for. And he also, that mentality trickles down to his team, right? Like he does not, and actually he did a LinkedIn post on this recently, and I told him to do it because I'd heard him say this multiple times at different company meetings, leadership meetings. He had written about it in emails, this sort of no leaders at
Mm.
ZoomInfo. And he ended up doing a LinkedIn post about it. He actually created the image himself that he posted because I was on vacation the day that he did it. And he was like, I used AI to create this image. I was like, great job. Um,
So
but
happy. Oh my God.
but he ended up, I was like, you should write about this. This is something that you feel passionately about. And it's basically what you just said. It's there isn't really a place at ZoomInfo for leaders who just all they do is manage other people. Like Henry has an expectation that if you are leading at ZoomInfo, you are an expert in your craft, that you are an expert practitioner, I think. And so you're not just managing people who are the experts and do all the work. You have to be
Yeah.
in there, like really leading by example, like a player coach mentality almost.
Yeah. So I was curious, as you're launching the other executives and activating them, I think with Paige, what are the KPIs, metrics that you're looking at that you care about?
Yep. So we're looking, I'd say we all of the sort of traditional metrics that you would look at for social media success. So we're looking at, are they growing, particularly for executives, are they growing followers over time?
Hmm.
Um, and that's like an important one because we want to make sure that pe they're becoming sort of their own, they're becoming, spokespeople for the company,
Yeah.
basically. And how many people are following them? How many people are paying attention? How many engagements are their posts getting? How many, comments, reshares, all
Yep.
those things. And we will track over time. We actually just set some of our goals for the second half of the year for, okay, we would like to see, our CRO's profile grow by this amount. We saw it grow by
Hmm.
this much, last year. We think this is a reasonable growth metric for this year, the second half of the year. So we're looking at those things. We're also looking at, are we able to land them on podcasts and are we able to get
Mm.
out there talking to media as experts in their respective domains. So I think so we're kind of and then are we getting them to at different industry events, getting them, speaking engagements.
Yep.
So it's not just on social. It's there's so again any modern I think strategy you're looking at all these different levers that you can pull,
Yep.
all these different ways that you can get your message out there.
So is this the new PR playbook, which is to have your executives, your CEO, create content on LinkedIn, be on podcasts? And what role does this play relative to the traditional being featured in the, I don't know, New York Times or TechCrunch or
It's so interesting what's happening right now, especially with, the rise of AI and Chat GPT. So I will say we look at it as, owned versus earned media. And I think they're both equally important. I think if you aren't on LinkedIn and you're not thinking about that, about how, and that's your owned, right? Like you're owning that content, you're putting it out there. So you can control that message. But if you're looking at, what sources of information, if someone's typing into Chat GPT, tell me about Henry Schuck, the CEO of
Mhm.
ZoomInfo, they're not going to pull from what you're posting on LinkedIn. They're pulling from places like the New York Times, like it's what other people say about you that is feeding those generative AI models.
Mhm.
So they're looking at Reddit actually, which you also can't, Reddit is like Reddit's a whole other, you could probably do a whole episode about Reddit, but it's like that's what other people are saying about you. So I think the traditional media is still really important. And actually, I think it's going to become, I think that there's going to be a bit of a resurgence in terms of companies caring about that even more because that's what's feeding AI. It prioritizes those respected trusted sources of information over, your company blog,
Sure.
yeah.
Sure. Richard asked, how do you handle outreach connection requests, especially regarding CRM contacts, ICP accounts?
Sorry, what does he mean by that question?
Like, do you send out connection requests through Henry's LinkedIn profile to, I don't know, CEOs
Oh,
of target accounts, for example?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Not really. I don't really, I manage his DMs. So I will help because his DMs get really overwhelming. So I will go in. I will only manage the ones when it's like a customer that has an issue
Sure.
who DMing him, or sometimes he'll get media requests or speaking engagement requests, and then I'll respond to those. But in terms of connection requests, I don't really touch those for Henry. And he has a lot. So that would be a question for him, but I don't handle his connections, no.
Do you know if the sales and marketing team harness this in any way? One thing that I'm super interested in that we do with customers is to use it for account scoring because you can see, oh, this post by Henry had like these three people from this target account engaged, so we can use that to score that account or move it up in priority. Do you guys do any of that or warm outreach?
So what we do, that's really interesting, actually. So I will say the way that we have used Henry, actually, this is something we are doing right now because there's platforms that you can use where you can like send out DMs, like at scale, kind of. And so we have used Henry, in the sense of trying to help reach out to prospects or current customers in a more coordinated, like
Mhm.
at scale. And so I will help with that in terms of helping with that messaging, helping to make sure it's personalized to those people that it sounds like Henry, so we do
Mm.
in that sense. But no, I don't think we've done anything like you just mentioned with account scoring. That's a really good idea that we
Do you
should.
guys do any thought leader ads to amplify his posts?
We will boost his posts. Yeah, we will boost them, but not really. I don't think we've done thought leader ad. What would be an example of like an ad in that context? Like
So it's basically a promoted post. So like it's the same post, but it runs through his like it shows up as a regular post through Henry's profile rather than the ZoomInfo company page. Um,
we do a lot of that. Like most of what we do with Henry is organic.
mhm.
So
What
yeah,
what I again that's why I'm so curious because I think one of the things that we're seeing that works really well is what you can do is you can obviously you see organic is kind of like the indicator of what's resonating, right? You see and then you take those that you know resonate because they did well organically, and then you run those to your target accounts, whatever tier one target accounts, and then what LinkedIn as thought leader ads, and so their CEO, their CRO, they will see those posts by Henry often they won't realize that it's an ad because it just looks like a regular organic post. But then the LinkedIn ad manager will give you insights into who are the most engaged accounts. So they will tell you Chase Morgan, interacted with Henry's post 17 times in the last 7 days. So that's another indicator that, maybe that could be account scoring or just that they're currently in buying mode or something like that. So I think LinkedIn is rolling out much more on that side too with the thought leader ads and
that's
stuff like
very
that.
cool. And this is where, yeah, that's great. And I'm going to actually write that down and take that back because I don't think we're doing that. And I think, this is also what's really exciting about the age that we're in right now is LinkedIn is it's just constantly changing. It's like there's always new ways of experimenting and doing different things. And
Yeah.
so pretty cool
Do
to
you
have.
have any ways who are some of the like, I don't know, CEOs or leaders that you learn from or that, you pay attention to? I mean, there's not many at your scale. I know Daniel Ek is creating some amount of the Spotify CEO. There's
Mm,
some, but there's not many kind of like Henry out there who are this active.
uh, I actually have been I've been building a list or of like CEOs that I think are doing this well.
Hmm.
You know who does it very well? John Gray at Blackstone.
Hmm.
You should look him up. He's been featured actually, I think, by the executive editor at LinkedIn, and he
Hmm.
he does these series of running videos where he's a big runner. This is like such a great actually example of like how to do CEO comms, right? I want Henry to do something like this, but like authentic to him. But so John Gray's a runner and he travels a lot for work. So he films these selfie videos of himself. He's in Tokyo, he's in Sydney, he's wherever, and he's on a run. So he's like filming while he's jogging and he's talking about what like a business something related to the business that is specific to that place where he's running. So he'll be like, I want to tell you how I feel about, our business in Australia right now and what I'm seeing in the macro. And, and so he does, so
That's cool.
he ties it to the place and you're like, you feel like you're getting a glimpse behind the curtain of the CEO behind the scenes. And it's great. And it's now become, he then sometimes like gets employees in those cities to run with him.
Ah,
So good. It's so good. You should go check them out. And so so I'm always looking for inspiration like that because I was like, that checks so many boxes. It shows this guy as a person. Then this is something he likes to do. He's taking you along on just like his daily routine, but not in like a cringe
yeah.
way. Because sometimes these day in the life videos are super cringe, like so to do that, to strike that perfect balance, and it feels authentic. Anyway, so yeah, I think also the McDonald's CEO does a good
Huh.
job. Mm. There's a few. I should have actually come here with a list, but it's exciting to watch. Like I find it really fun to watch because I'm like, oh wow, they did that. Like that's pretty cool. We should think about that. Like for
Yeah.
the um
Is anything kind of like on your guys' horizon in terms of like how to expand the playbook? I mean, you mentioned the other executives that you want to add, but in terms of for Henry's, is it just kind of let's keep, finding out, going with our rhythm, and obviously there will always be some small experiments or other major kind of initiatives.
One thing that we're trying to do that we actually we did our first stab at it this week, is changing the way that we're using Henry for bigger announcements and for quarterly earnings. So in the past, he would post about earnings with like a graphic and,
Hmm.
or a text post with a graphic. And this time we filmed a video of him and actually got inspiration from John Gray at Blackstone for this because he does these. And I convinced Henry to do it. I've been trying to get Henry to do this for a few quarters now, and he finally agreed. So after he did the earnings call, we went back to his office and we had like a little film set up and we shot him with an iPhone of him just talking in plain English. Here are the things that three takeaways from our earnings call. Here's things that I'm excited about from our earnings call. And so it's just like a vertical video. And then we use that video, all of our employees, like we have a employee advocacy program where it's like through Sprout Social that we
Hmm.
can, get them to all post the same thing. And so we had them post that video. And so if it was cool, because the next day, the past couple days, I was scrolling through my feed and this video of Henry just kept popping up. And I was like, okay. And so I would say finding more ways to break down maybe complex messages or think, earnings is pretty
Yeah.
dense. Earnings is tough. Not a lot of people, even our own employees, I think, don't always understand earnings. Like it has taken me 5 years. I now understand all of the metrics,
Right.
but it's complicated, right? And it's also so I think figuring out how do you take Henry, who not only understands it, but he's the best advocate for the company, and get him to sort of just explain it so that people will pay attention. So,
Yeah. I mean, again, one of my big takeaways from this is that part of the reason why it works so well for you guys is because you both are so hands-on. I mean, like what you mentioned with kind of shadowing him and listening to podcasts he's on, and I mean, he's very involved. It's like this is not a quick like, hey, like write some things for me, but I don't really want to look at this stuff. Like how involved how many hours do you think Henry spends on this? And I mean, I'm sure it's because I talk to people and they're startup founders and they're like 2 hours is way too much for me on LinkedIn. And I feel like Henry's spending more than 2 hours. I mean, it's also where all his customers and prospects and everyone is, but
yeah. Question. I don't know how many hours a week he's spending on it. We try to make it. as light of a lift as possible for him. So there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. Like
Yeah.
for this video, we had it all set up. I had drafted a script for him, which he didn't really end up using, but I was like, this is just to film, this is just to get you thinking about what do
Yeah.
you want to say. I actually did not want him to follow a script, but I just wanted to give him
Mm.
something to react to. And so I don't, for that video, he spent maybe 15 minutes and that was it. And then everything else was us. Then
Right.
we did the production and he had a quick, we went back and forth a little bit on the caption for the post. But so, yeah, I think it is our job, as communicators and content creators to be respectful of
Yeah.
your CEO's time and your executive's time so that we're doing the heavy lifting and they can kind of just show up and turn it on and then move on to something else.
Yeah. No, I also didn't mean it as a criticism. I mean,
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
that there's a whole team behind it, and you guys are doing a heavy lift here. And Henry is quite hands-on and involved. And I think a lot of CEOs are not willing to even do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that's true. So yeah, we're very lucky.
All right, we're coming up here on time. If there's any, Robert, Henry embodies a mantra of legendary film director Sidney Lumet. The role of the directors make sure everyone working on the film is making the same movie.
I love that.
No, I think that's your role. I think
That's my role.
that's
Yeah,
your
that's my
role.
role.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Correct.
You're the director. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you so much, Megan. I had a blast. I learned a ton of stuff. I'm pretty sure there's a ton of stuff in there for other PR comms, brand leaders who are maybe thinking of building their CEO brand or elevating it a little bit, and lots of nuggets in here. Any last remaining thoughts? Anything I should have asked that I didn't?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot of ground and I actually learned a lot from you. I'm going to go follow up on that thought leader ad idea. So thank you so much, Finn, for having me and thank you to everyone for joining and asking such thoughtful questions.